Horrifying demons descend upon Earth, annihilating humanity in their quest for eternal life. Ian Stone is killed every day by mysterious creatures, and each time he starts a new life, forgetting the previous ones. One day, Ian Stone is participating in yet another hockey match. At the very end of the game, he scores the winning goal, but the referee disallows it and ends the game early, resulting in Ian's team losing. His teammates blame Ian for the loss and give him disdainful looks as they head home. In the locker room, Ian tries to pull himself together, and luckily, his girlfriend Jenny comes to support him. He then offers to drive Jenny home, and they finally leave the stadium. Before dropping her off, Ian shares his frustrations about the game and can't stop wondering how the time on the scoreboard could have stopped on its own.
The day where just everything's going wrong.
Jenny starts kissing Ian, distracting him from his negative thoughts, but they are interrupted by Jenny's parents, who appear in the window of their house. She says goodbye to Ian and rushes inside. Ian notices the eerie swing set in her yard before he drives away. Near the railroad tracks, Ian suddenly stops his car when he sees a person lying in the middle of the road. Despite the heavy rain, he gets out of the car to try to help the stranger. When he touches the person's shoulder, they jerk awake, and Ian quickly returns to his car to call for help. However, he can't get through to emergency services. A few seconds later, he looks up from his phone and realizes the person is no longer there. Suddenly, a huge monster smashes through his windshield, grabs Ian with its terrifying limbs, and drags him toward the tracks. Ian desperately tries to break free from the creature's grasp, but it holds him until a train runs him over. Immediately after the collision, Ian finds himself in an office. He looks older than his years and is confused about what is happening. Soon, Ian's boss approaches and asks if he has reviewed the sent spreadsheets. Ian has no recollection of any spreadsheets but responds that he was just about to look at them. Jenny then comes up to Ian, now not his girlfriend but just a colleague. She hands him new documents, adding even more to his workload. Ian asks if she has reconsidered going to her relatives for the weekend, and she sighs, saying she can't avoid it, even though she dreads her mother's lectures about getting married and having children. Throughout the day, Ian works intensely, then gathers his things and prepares to go home. He steps into the elevator, and at the last moment, a clearly frightened and agitated man rushes in. On the ground floor, the man panics, runs out of the elevator, bumps into a pile of empty boxes, and hastily leaves the building. Ian heads towards the exit, noticing that the security guard is giving him a strange look. Outside, Ian sees that the man from the elevator has collapsed. Concerned bystanders are trying to help, thinking he might be having a heart attack. Among them, Ian notices a suspicious man holding the collapsed man's hand, and his face seems vaguely familiar. However, Ian walks past the unfortunate man from the elevator and finally returns home. Pouring himself a drink, he looks out the window and notices a strange human shadow in the building opposite. Suddenly, his wife, Medea, silently sneaks up behind him and startles him. That night, they make love, and afterward, Medea gives Ian a wristwatch, hoping it will help him be less frequently late. Medea excitedly talks about the watch's useful features but notices that Ian's mind is elsewhere. She asks what's wrong, and Ian tells her about the man from the elevator who died before his eyes and the strange person in the crowd. Ian admits that the person reminded him a lot of the referee in hockey who constantly picked on him. Medea is surprised to learn that Ian used to play hockey, but he insists he has told her about it before. To remind his wife of his athletic past, Ian pulls out an album and shows her a photo of the team. However, after examining the players, Medea says he isn't among them. As they snack on ice cream, Ian tries to make sense of it all, convinced that he clearly remembers playing hockey in college.
Problem is, I'm remembering something that never happened.
Medea doesn't find it strange and advises Ian to ignore it. They return to bed, but Ian can't fall asleep. Suddenly, he hears a mysterious male voice saying it's already too late, and then he sees a creepy shadow outside the window. The next morning, Medea wakes Ian up, telling him to get up quickly or he'll be late for work. On his way to the office, he notices that his new watch has stopped, and during one of the stops, he sees two guys on the bus who look like his old hockey teammates. The guys look back at Ian and give him strange looks before getting off the bus. Ian chases after them, but they give him the middle finger and disappear into the crowd. Suddenly, a man named Gray stops Ian.
If you don't listen to me, you'll be killed.
Gray tells Ian they need to move to a safe place quickly. Seeing a suspicious man in the crowd, Ian follows Gray. Once they are in an alley, Ian finally asks if he knows Gray. Gray doesn't answer directly but mentions that Ian's watch stopped this morning and that they come for him every time his watch stops. Gray doesn't explain who they are but informs Ian that they have been hunting him since yesterday, when he woke up in the office and this life, which they specifically created for him, began. Ian doesn't believe Gray and starts to leave, But Gray says this life will soon end just like the previous one, where he played hockey in college. Ian stops and starts to take Gray more seriously after hearing that hockey was indeed part of his life. Gray assures Ian that he was someone else before and that if they take his life again, this cycle of different lives will be endless, with him dying every day. Gray explains that they can alter reality and control minds, making Ian see only what they want him to see. Ian, growing irritated, demands to know who they are, and Gray says these beings are usually called demons or ghosts. Ian insists he doesn't believe in witchcraft, but Gray continues to assert that these creatures, living in another dimension, will come for him to make him do what they want. Frustrated and angry, Ian suddenly grabs Gray and pushes him against the wall, demanding to know what they want. At that moment, a black monster emerges from the wall and drags Gray away. Shaken, Ian runs out to the street and suddenly sees a person with black holes instead of eyes. Blinking, he realizes it was just his imagination. He tries to call someone, but his phone has no signal. He then rushes into a phone booth, but all he hears through the receiver is strange noise. Ian runs out of the booth and hurries home. Bursting into his apartment, he tells Medea that something is hunting him. Suddenly, he hears eerie sounds coming from the basement and, in a panic, locks the door. Medea tries to calm and embrace him, but suddenly red splatters appear on the door. Medea stabs Ian with a huge black claw, revealing she is one of them. She kisses him, then pushes him to the floor and strikes again. She says he shouldn't have remembered his past life, then slashes his throat. Ian wakes up in a new life behind the wheel of a car and nearly crashes into a truck. This time, he is a taxi driver, and Jenny is his next passenger. Jenny asks him to stay alert and not fall asleep at the wheel, and he apologizes for his carelessness. To stay awake, Ian starts a conversation with Jenny. She mentions she's visiting her parents for the weekend and complains again about the inevitable talks about marriage and children. Soon, Ian drops Jenny off at her house, and she invites him in for coffee. Ian declines, not wanting to intrude, so Jenny offers to bring the coffee out to him. While waiting, Ian notices a mysterious man on the street and then sees a creepy shadow in the window of a neighboring house. Suddenly, Jenny appears behind him. Startled, Ian quickly gets back into the car and sees that his watch has stopped again. Grabbing the coffee Jenny brought him, he drives off and soon spots Gray waving at him from the roadside. Ian brakes sharply and, taking a wrench for safety, approaches Gray. He feels he knows Gray but can't remember from where. Gray grabs his shoulders and tells Ian he must remember everything, or they will come for him again. He also warns that Jenny is in danger and needs protection. Flashbacks from Ian's past lives flash before his eyes, showing that he was always connected to Jenny in some way. Suddenly, Ian hears a noise behind him and turns around, raising the wrench. Gray vanishes, and Ian notices a black monster on the rooftop of a building. After being attacked by the creature, Ian wakes up again. This time, he finds himself in an employment agency. Clearly remembering fragments of his past lives, he tries to find any information in the papers on the desk. Just then, Jenny enters the office, helping him with his job search. They discuss Ian's past interviews, but soon Jenny notices that Ian seems deeply troubled. She asks if everything is okay, and Ian decides to tell her the truth. Ian confesses that he wakes up in different places every day, and everything changes except for her. Jenny doesn't believe him and suggests that he might have relapsed into using drugs, despite his earlier promises to stay clean. He tries to convince Jenny that he is telling the truth and that they are genuinely in danger. Soon, he notices that time has stopped again, and a man from his past lives is waiting outside the door, now with a huge black claw. Terrified, Ian bolts from the office and runs into the elevator, but the monster suddenly punches through the elevator ceiling with its black claw. Ian escapes again and runs into the hallway, bumping into Jenny, who is confused and doesn't understand what's happening. Ian repeats that she is in danger, then sees even more men from his past lives appearing.
Stop running.
Ian runs in terror to the stairs and soon finds himself in the parking lot, where he is pursued by two dark shadows. Bursting onto the street, Ian hails a taxi and manages to escape from the monsters for a short time. However, soon a black claw pierces through the roof of the car. In a panic, Ian jumps out of the taxi, only to be hit by another car. He lies on the road, unable to move from his injuries, and soon Medea and the other men approach him and this time, Ian wakes up to loud music in a filthy apartment and realizes he's a junkie. Hearing a knock, he struggles to get up from the mattress, opens the front door, and sees Jenny, who is now his neighbor. She demands him to lower the music, and Ian tries to talk to her, but she suddenly notices his arm and sees a syringe sticking out of a damaged vein. Jenny recoils in disgust and goes back to her place. After a while, Jenny gets ready to leave. She opens the door, and Ian bursts into the apartment, asking for help. Jenny grabs a kitchen knife, preparing to defend herself, but Ian reminds her that they knew each other in past lives. Suddenly, he feels sick, and the clocks stop again. Jenny wants to call for help, but Ian forbids her to leave the apartment. He urges her to remember events from their past lives and tells her facts he couldn't have known. It seems like Jenny is indeed starting to recall something, but then a monster's claw breaks through her front door. The dark shadows infiltrate the apartment, but Ian and Jenny manage to escape through the window. As they descend the stairs, they find themselves in the backyard, surrounded by monsters. Ian grabs a piece of glass, but suddenly Medea appears behind him and grabs his hand with a shard. Then she grabs him by the throat and presses him against the wall, preparing to finish him off once again. But suddenly Jenny approaches Medea from behind and stabs her in the shoulder with a knife. Medea is distracted, and Ian and Jenny flee. Soon they descend into the subway, and Jenny finds a piece of fabric to bandage Ian's arm. Additionally, she confesses that she started remembering all their past lives after he asked her to recall them. Finally, the train arrives, and they board it, hoping to delay the inevitable encounter with the monsters. Ian tells Jenny that she should stay away from him, but she insists on sticking together until the end. At the next stop, a guard enters the car. For a few seconds, he stares at the couple intently, then exits the car to join Medea and the others. The couple continues their journey, and Jenny falls asleep on Ian's shoulder. Soon, Gray appears out of nowhere next to Ian. He notices that Ian looks bad and finally realizes that Gray is one of these creatures. Gray explains that they are called harvesters and that they live forever, feeding on human fear. When an old man enters the car at the next station, Gray takes on the guise of a monster and scares him to horror. The old man runs away, and Gray looks fresh and healthy again. Then Gray explains that ordinary fear is not enough for many harvesters anymore, and now they are seeking stronger emotions.
And the fear one of them experiences the moment before a violent death is the most potent.
Now the harvesters cannot stop and are taking more and more lives, evolving from parasites into predators. Ian doesn't understand why the harvesters won't leave him alone, and Gray tells him that Ian was once the most powerful harvester and rebelled against the others. They cannot destroy him, but they can throw him from one life to another until he returns to them. Gray reminds the shaken Ian that he must protect Jenny because she's his only chance at a normal life. He also warns that the harvesters have found them already and then disappears. Ian wakes Jenny, and they rush out of the car, but monsters in the guise of hockey players are already following them at the station. The couple runs again and accidentally knocks down a passing guy. Ian and Jenny escape, but the guy gets his throat slit, consumed by his fear. Soon, the harvesters led by Medea finally catch up with Ian and Jenny. Medea says Ian is weak because he hasn't fed for a long time, then extends her black claws and presses Jenny against the wall. Ian's veins start to darken, and Medea says that his need for others' fear will soon outweigh emotions. Medea convinces Ian to return to the harvesters so they can be together again, and to do that, he needs to destroy Jenny. Suddenly, Ian's expression changes, and he starts choking Jenny, absorbing her fear. She begs him to stop, and at the last moment, he releases her, then throws himself onto the train.
Sorry!
Ian finds himself in yet another life. He wakes up strapped to a bed in a psychiatric hospital and calls out for help. Soon, a nurse comes to check on him, but she sees a completely different scene. To her, Ian is simply in a coma. After ensuring his condition is stable, the nurse leaves, and Medea appears before the restrained Ian. She tells him that the harvesters have to take his life each time to make him forget why he turned against them, but his memories keep resurfacing. Medea demands Ian to confess how he managed to kill one of the harvesters since none of them possess such power. Ian himself doesn't know what happened, so Medea and the other harvesters decide to take drastic measures. They transfer Ian to an operating room where they start torturing him in various ways. Medea explains that they cannot destroy him, but they won't let him go either since he has become a threat to the other harvesters. She warns him that they will keep torturing him until he tells them the truth, but after another toxic injection, he loses consciousness. Ian soon wakes up in a ward and sees a child lying in the bed across from him. Then Medea appears next to Ian and tells him he needs to feed, or he will weaken. Ian doesn't want to harm the child, so the other harvesters take on horrifying forms and scare the boy instead. The child screams in terror, and doctors and nurses rush in, but they can't understand what happened. Ian briefly loses consciousness again and then sees Jenny, now a nurse, in front of him. She asks how he's doing and leaves, triggering a flood of memories for Ian of the tortures Medea inflicted, trying to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, Medea realizes that Ian betrayed the harvesters because of Jenny, whom he now unconsciously brings into each life. Medea is convinced that once they get rid of Jenny, Ian will return to them and become a normal harvester again. Some time later, an aged and weakened Gray appears in Ian's ward. He explains that Ian became human thanks to his love for Jenny. This love made him strong enough to destroy other harvesters, stop feeding on fear and pain, and even create life. Gray shares that he, too, once found his love and gained a new life, but the harvesters destroyed his beloved. Now, Ian must do everything possible to prevent them from taking Jenny from him. However, to do this, he needs to feed. Ian insists he can't harm others, so Gray offers to let Ian feed on his fear, helping him pass away. Ian reluctantly agrees, and Gray takes his hand, transferring his remaining strength to Ian. Ian's wounds instantly heal, and Gray literally dissipates into thin air. Soon after, the harvesters return to the ward and find that Ian is nowhere to be seen. They meticulously search the room, which has been turned upside down, when suddenly Ian, in the form of a monster, attacks one of the harvesters. After dealing with the second harvester, Ian leaves the ward in human form and heads towards Jenny. Meanwhile, Jenny is working in the archive, unaware of the eerie black shadows of the harvesters closing in on her. Each time one of them attempts to attack her, Ian strikes first, piercing them with his massive claw. After eliminating the harvesters in the archive and the hallway, Ian follows Jenny to the morgue. There, Jenny notices the monsters and calls for help. Ian tells her to run and engages in battle with the harvesters. Jenny dashes into the corridor, but Medea ambushes her. Hearing Jenny's screams, Ian rushes to her aid. He prepares to fight Medea, but she suddenly turns him back into his human form and begins shifting him through his different lives. Medea then brings him back and declares that Jenny won't be with him in his next life. Medea grabs Jenny, using her as a shield. Ian realizes there is only one way to destroy Medea. He drives his claw through both Jenny and Medea, recalling Gray's words about the power of love to bring forth life. Medea disintegrates immediately, and Ian catches the wounded Jenny. He promises that she will remember this as just a bad dream and heals her with the power of his love. In the end, Ian finds himself back on the ice rink, and this time, no referees interfere as he scores the decisive goal. Jenny comes to the locker room to congratulate Ian on his victory, and he thanks her for making him human. She doesn't understand what he means, as she has no memory of what happened. Suddenly, Ian notices a strange person and immediately gives chase. He finds the harvester in one of the corridors and attacks with his black claw, fiercely protecting his human life. How would you act if you were in the main character's place? Would you return to the harvesters and continue feeding on fear, or choose the path of eternal struggle for your happiness in the ordinary world? Share your thoughts in the comments below, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next videos.